1978. Cindy thrashed awake, her body breaking into a cold sweat, with heart palpitations radiating through her chest. It happened again. The nightmares were striking her at her most vulnerable, in the dead of the night, and each instance was becoming increasingly frequent. The demons of her past tiptoed into her unconscious mind, taunting the backs of her eyelids while she slept. She was alone in the motel room she rented on the edge of a barren highway, the kind of place where the air conditioning gave out every so often, and the hinges of the door were so rusted you could practically watch them disintegrate into the nothingness. The buzzing light bulbs on the street sign flickered erratically. To a passer-by, the place looked abandoned, but to Cindy, it was a place to rest her head. With the minuscule amount of money she earned in a day, the tremors made her body ache, and she became angry that getting some rest was apparently too much to ask for. Sleeping used to be the only thing served as an escape from the grim realities of her life. Her days and nights blended together, mingling with the unsavoury to earn enough to purchase something to eat. Sometimes more if she ran into the right people. As a significant member of the underground underclass, Cindy had a reputation. Many knew her name and face. Her high cheekbones and pouty bottom lip served as distinguishing characteristics of her appearance. They were the only things that made her feel attractive anymore. Her line of work was taxing, requiring her to disconnect herself from reality. She spent years on autopilot, letting her life spiral deeper with every passing season into an abysmal rut. Her ears began to ring loudly. The dead quiet of the motel room created a deafening silence in her psyche. She clumsily pressed the buttons on the television set, bringing the screen to life, just to be met with a blast of static noise, bleeding, and bright white and grey flurries littering the screen. Desperately, Cindy twisted the knobs and nudged the bunny ear antenna set atop the TV, but it was no use. The sounds were too much for her to handle, the harshness. She covered her ears and bolted for the door. She needed to get outside, to hear something that didn't seem concocted from her imagination. Another human voice, perhaps. An idea intruded into her train of thought. What if this was a nightmare too? Could she trust her mind? Once outside, on the damp pavement of the dilapidated motel parking lot, she realised the ringing had lessened somewhat. She took a deep breath of momentary relief. What wasn't enough. She felt utterly abandoned, terrified of what was lurking in the darkness around her body and in her mind. There was only one person left that could comfort her, Cindy's best friend. She and Anne grew up together. They were assigned to sit side by side in primary school. Both girls constantly risked getting punished with their chitter-chatter. The two remained close until their early adulthood, when a metaphorical fork in the road split them. Anne took the idyllic way made up of white picket fences and motherhood. In contrast, Cindy took the less travelled path, allowing her to rebel against the status quo expected of her. At first, it felt empowering, but she quickly learned there was no going back. The only light in the distance was from a telephone box. Cindy took another deep breath and shuffled towards the structure, dragging her feet over the surface, silently hoping that she could get to hear her friend's voice. Anne could never solve a problem, but she was always there to listen and support. Sometimes Cindy felt guilty that she didn't have the capacity to return support to Anne. She assumed her friend had ups and downs too. However, selfishly, Cindy knew she would take any of Anne's problems with a smile compared to those in her own life. Cindy yanked on the door of the call box. She was greeted by more buzzing. This time it was incessant and whiny. She dropped a series of coins into the slot and dialed the phone number, the one she knew by heart. A series of digits she could never forget, even if she tried. Feeling paranoid, she gawked through the glass of the call box. The contrast of darkness outside and the bright light in the box had her every move on full display. It was like being in a small shop window, staring anxiously to hear her friend answer. While she was waiting, her foot tapped the ground nervously. She noticed that the ringing stopped, but there wasn't a voice that wasn't being replaced by a voice, as if someone had picked up their end of the call, but decided not to speak. Cindy's heart began to race again with the uncertainty. Anne? Another bout of silence filled the phone. Cindy didn't have any more coins to hang up and call again, so she reluctantly waited for a return voice. It was her only shot. Finally, Anne's voice echoed in her ear. You can't keep doing this. It didn't sound like her bubbly friend. This was an apathetic version of Anne, like a balloon that lost all of its air, lifeless. Cindy wanted to defend herself, but Anne continued before Cindy had a chance. You keep interrupting my life with your problems, Anne said. I'm done with being a bystander. Clean yourself up. It's time to face everything you've created. Cindy's legs weakened beneath her. Give me one more chance. She stammered over her words, trying to devise an excuse. This wife wasn't all her fault. It wasn't all her fault. Couldn't Anne see that? It's your life, Anne said. Fix it, or you'll die trying. And that was the last thing to come from her best friend's cold voice before the line went dead. Cindy dropped to her bony knees, drowning in sorrow each salty tear that ran down her cheek burned like a line of fire in the lush forest. Now she knew what it meant to be entirely alone. The last person she could count on, arguably the one who cared most of all, had drawn a harsh line in the sand. Their friendship was now another fragment of the wreckage of her life. Cindy kept her eyes clamped shut and let her cries flow freely, no longer attempting to muffle the weeps. Once she got her breath, Cindy became quiet and noticed it was now dawn. The sky was no longer an eerie black. Instead, it had faded into an ombre of purples. The buzzing was being drowned out by chirping in the distance. She picked herself up from the phone booth floor and stepped out into the outside air, deciding to follow the tweeting sounds towards a tall magnolia tree. She peered up at the trunk. She could see a small bird atop a thin branch, singing blissfully. A hopeful smile curled along her lips as she turned to stare up at the sky. The sun was now crawling above the horizon, breaking into the day. Though Cindy had seen plenty of birds, sunrises and sunsets in her time, something about this was different. Her surroundings grounded her. Somehow, they made her feel real, like they were speaking to her, showing her that each day on earth is a fresh start. She realised new beginnings could not exist without an ending of sorts. For Cindy, yesterday was that ending. Today was her rebirth. Anne was right. This was her life, and she was the only one with the power to change her path.